Hello, welcome to another episode of Rebel Therapy Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Katie.
And I am Michelle, your other host.
And because the world is a little bit on fire right now, we thought we'd go in a slightly different direction today. Maybe it'll be entertaining and sort of talk about bad dates in the world of apps. Whether you're a therapist or you're not a therapist, or you go to therapy or you don't go to therapy, or maybe the experience will drive you to therapy. Either way, let's talk about current and common dating icks, flags, green flags, red flags. I don't know. We'll just talk about it. Have a conversation. Okay.
Let's get into it. Yeah. What's coming up for you first when you're thinking about bad dates or red flags in dates?
You know, I was thinking about the people that you sort of, you connect with very briefly. You've not met in person yet. And then you get up in the morning and you have a text that's like a paragraph and a half long. And I realized that everything in me just wants to go, blah. No, no, thank you. No, thank you. And I had to sort of sit around and think about it for a while. Like, I mean, I'm talking about people who are sending messages that are appropriate messages. They're not disrespectful. It's not X-rated. It's nothing like that. It's just too much. Like the volume of it is too much. And I was thinking about why that annoys me so much.
And any insights?
Yeah, actually, absolutely. And I think that one of the reasons it bugs me so much, and I mean, this happens with like early friendships as well, but anytime I've just met someone and it's like, it's sort of an extension of the red flag stuff we talked about before. It's the expectation, I think, or at least this is how I perceive it, the expectation of the other person that I'm going to put this much emotional energy into the exchange. And I'm like, you know what? I don't even know you yet. I don't like, I'm a busy person. I mean, I could do it if I wanted to, but I have other things I'd rather be doing with my time. It's kind of stepping over what feels to me like a bit of a boundary. It's almost like a sense of entitlement. And I feel like I'm being drawn into more work that I've actually agreed to.
It feels like jumping over steps where it's like they haven't earned the intimacy of sending you long messages in the morning,
Or
demand
my
a huge
attention.
response.
Well, they haven't really earned my attention yet. And it's not even that I think they're bad people. It's just I don't know. I don't know if
Yeah.
you're someone in whom I plan to invest any energy or time. So slow down.
So too much, too fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
So someone coming on, like for you, what for you feels like too strong, and for the other person might just feel like they're trying to show interest.
Yes, but I am fairly certain that if that's how they are out of the gate, there's, again, maybe nothing wrong with that inherently for somebody else, but I don't think I've ever had a situation where that person in real life has actually been very chill, or at least not the kind of chill that I enjoy spending time around. So it's a good tool for me. I'm like, move on.
Right. So you've had enough experience or experiments to know that when somebody has that behavior like that, that's so quick, that is probably going to be someone that's not suited to you.
And let's assume that part of this whole, assuming somebody wants to jump into the whole dating world or whatever, I think a lot of it is really about fit. It's like finding a good therapist, right? I mean, there are lots of cool people, but they're not all for me.
Absolutely.
And I'm not for them, right? Yeah.
Totally. And I don't know whether we're like more attuned to this because we are therapists and even just like part of our training is this, but like the idea of like pace and how much space somebody enjoys and like what's too close for somebody, what's too far away. And so it's like if you're quite attuned with that in your body, it's like an immediate reaction if you feel like someone's just like encroached on you a little bit. And it hasn't been like worked out, right? It's like it's almost like they think it's an implicit understanding and it's not, right? Like it actually needs to be explicit. And I think that's one of the things people struggle with when they get into relationships, right? Is like actually your timing and your pace of life, like how quickly do you want to respond? How many texts a day are you willing to have? Like, do you want to talk on the phone? Do you want video chats? Do you want voice notes? Like and it's not like one size fits all. It's obviously going to be individual to the relationship. Maybe you'll never be a person that wants huge texts throughout the day, but like maybe with someone that's a better fit, you're more open to more contact in different ways.
Well, that actually makes me laugh a little bit because my best friend, who I love like a brother, we had to have a little negotiation earlier in our relationship around texting because he would send me 18 individual texts at a time. And I was like, no, nope, that's just a hard pass. So we've now negotiated a system that works pretty well where I text more than I want to, and he is satisfied with less than he really wants. So we found a
Oh
nice
my
kind of
God.
balance. And every now and then he'll just call me and it's much easier. But to your point, the difference here, I think the distinction is that there needs to be sort of an agreement within the relationship that I'm willing to even put that work in. Like, I'm not necessarily going to do that work with somebody I don't know or that I don't really care about or I don't care about yet because I don't know you yet, right?
Yeah.
Like, there needs to be a foundation of agreement almost. And I think that's what's different about relationships out in the world and then a therapeutic relationship, right? There's the tacit, or it's not tacit, there's an explicit agreement that we make with our clients, that our clients make with us, around what the foundation of the relationship is, what the agreements are in terms of the relationship and consent and pacing and all these other things. And I'm not suggesting that out in the world all of our relationships need to be like therapeutic ones, of course not, but a little more understanding and awareness of the fact that I am coming with a set of expectations and meeting you who have your own set of expectations, and there's no reasonable expectation that those things are the same, right? Because I'm coming from a place, you're coming from a place. And so, as a first step, I think it makes sense to sort of negotiate what those expectations are. And I think that whether it's a friendship or romantic relationship, it doesn't matter. I think it makes sense to have that negotiation much earlier in the process, right? Like, kind of think about when you hire someone or you're hired on for a job, you do those negotiations at the beginning of the relationship, not somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah. No, I think you're right in that texting etiquette, and I think everyone thinks their texting etiquette is the right way to do it.
Right.
And yeah, it's like you have to be able to like step outside that a little bit and be like, no, that's actually just my preference. Part of what being in a relationship is that like sometimes, like you said, you have to do more or give more than maybe you would want in a particular way. And that person is going to be able to do with less, right? And it's
Right.
because you've decided the relationship is more valuable
Yes.
and you're
Yeah.
willing to give that thing to kind of balance it. But I think that kind of comes into like when there's like these, I don't know if they're like norms or just like people think there is this like right way to do it. If you're someone who doesn't want to text all of the time and
There's Joey, he has no set of boundaries at all.
he's not listening to your
No,
etiquette.
he's not. He doesn't care. But he does give
um,
unconditional love, so it's worth it. Right.
yeah, there you go. That sort of balance between what you're willing to give and what you're willing to accept. And I
Yes.
think it is kind of inherently a dance because everybody has those different communication styles and preferences. And I think where it goes wrong in sort of the dating, like you said, is like thinking that this is an understanding we both have, but we've never actually talked about it, Like,
Yeah, and
it's like,
like I've done before, I blame Disney, right? Like this idea that you meet someone and you're supposed to just know what that person needs or wants from you, or that that's how it should feel with them is just, I think, completely irrational, frankly, and
yes,
also
yeah.
impossible. Unless you're dating yourself. And even then, I don't always know what I want. So how can I expect someone else to know this? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think like the aversion to having explicit conversations because they think, or you think maybe it's less genuine or something. Like
Or
if,
less sexy. Like it shouldn't be this hard. I do hear from clients like, well, I mean, relationships shouldn't be work, should they? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course they should. What do you mean? The only scenario in which there is no work is being alone, because if I'm alone, I don't have to compromise. I don't have to think about anybody else's needs or wants. I don't have to adjust myself in any way, which is absolutely a viable option. And any relationship of any kind that I choose to be a part of will require me to do some work. So I do think that's a misunderstanding or a misconception a bit.
yeah, like if it's the right person, it will always be easy. We'll always know how each other feels.
Yeah.
We'll never have to like ask or clarify. And then I think that is where people do get into trouble because they often feel extremely hurt because they think something's intentional that actually was a misunderstanding, right? Like
That's
they're
right.
like, well, obviously they know how I feel about this thing, so they should never act in this way. And because they're acting in this way, they were purposely trying to hurt me, as
Yes.
opposed to being like, oh, they have a blind spot in this particular way, or I never actually communicated that very clearly. They don't understand that. They weren't trying to hurt me. Yeah, so like, how do you clarify that with someone? Like, what's a good way to do that? Like, I don't know, how have you found in the past? Like, clearly you're giving the example of you with your friend. And was that like a
Yeah,
face-to-face explicit conversation?
100%. Yes,
Yeah.
it was. And it's so funny because I'll sit with clients and they'll be telling me, very similar situations to what you're just describing. And I'll say, so, talk to a guy about a woman that he's dating or whatever. I'll say, well, how can you know what she wants? And he's like, well, I have to really I have to listen and I have to like, pay attention. And he's telling me about all the ways he's like really trying to assess whatever. I'm like, is there any way that you're missing perhaps? And they almost invariably miss out on, I guess you could just ask her. Right. Like it never occurs to people to just say, hey, this feels, and I understand why, obviously, but I don't think it often occurs to people to say, I don't really like the texting that's happening between us. Can we talk about that? Can we actually negotiate what's going on? Right. It's just hard. Or to even say, like, I don't know if this is okay for you. Do you
Yeah.
like this? I like this, or I don't like this, or whatever. But I think people, and well-intentioned people, right, are trying to anticipate people's needs, trying to assess somebody's needs by observing their behavior or whatever else. It just doesn't occur to us to simply ask. And I would argue that the only way you could possibly know what's going on for me, know for sure, is if you ask me and I tell you.
Yeah.
Everything else is a guess.
Might be an educated guess, but that doesn't mean you're right.
That's right. That's right. And it's funny that you bring up the work thing because I think even though we've talked about, there needs to be a certain amount of work or there will inherently be a certain amount of work in any relationship, I think the reverse is true also. I have talked to a lot of clients about their willingness to work unbelievably hard in a relationship and I sort of wonder like why though? Like what is your story about relationships that it should be this hard? Maybe. Do you want to work this hard? Is this actually working for you? Is there, again, very unsexy about it, but is there the ROI here for you? Like you're investing a lot of energy. Are you getting anything back? So again, it's this sort of misunderstanding of what is appropriate, I think, or what
Yeah.
level of work is appropriate in a relationship.
Absolutely. Like, it's coming back to those idea of like those shoulds, right? It should be
Yes.
this or it shouldn't be that, right? And I think oftentimes people haven't explored where that idea comes from. Why do you think it should be so much work? Why do you think it should be zero work, right? Like, what human relationship have you had that has been zero effort? Like, I don't know, right?
How much is too much? Yeah.
And also another thing that was coming up for me as you were saying that was just like the idea of consent. And I think that obviously has been spoken about a lot more in terms of like sexual contact,
Yeah.
but it's like there is also something about like energetic and emotional and, like you said, even like said the feeling like something's maybe too much and it being like hard to say. And I'm not saying you have to have explicit consent conversations about every interaction you have,
No.
but like
No.
the idea of kind of like these bigger themes that are like coming up in the way you make contact with each other, and just like checking in, like, is this working for you? What isn't working for you? And like actually being
Yeah.
open to hearing that, right? Like that not just being a platitude of like, oh, just tell me whatever. It's like you actually have to be willing to hang in for the answer, and you might hear something that might either like hurt or not something you really wanted to hear, or it's like maybe something you don't even understand.
Like it's challenging in some way, right?
Exactly. And how do you hang in with that space with somebody? I think that in itself is like extremely valuable, what you might learn about how compatible you are in a relationship. Because if you're never able to kind of hear something you maybe don't want to hear from that person, it's like, well, then you might never know how they truly feel. You also want to be known, right? And you would like someone to be open to knowing you, but it is that two-way street that, like you said, is ideally better if you start at the beginning, right? Like when it's you're negotiating more up front rather on the back end when the relationship is crumbling. You're like, let's go
Well,
back
yeah, I
in.
mean, I'll say to people, certainly my job as a therapist is to not judge anybody's relationship or their relationship choices. That's not the point. But what I'll say is like every relationship I think is unique, and each relationship comes down to the specific agreements that each person has made to the other. So I look at someone else's relationship and can think to myself as a private person, no, thank you, that would not work for me. But that's not the point. The point is, what did you agree to? And so often when I have this conversation, it'll sort of emerge that they didn't have the conversation at all. And I think, again, I blame Disney, but still, right? Like it makes sense. Nobody really teaches us to do these things. But if I don't ask you any of those questions, or it doesn't occur to me to ask you any of those questions, I don't know if I've misstepped with you, and vice versa.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of resentments come in. Like if I think about just the example that you gave with your friend, right? You you both could have just had like you could have been still pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, but not actually telling him that you are, and he could
Get
have still,
resentful.
you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
you're telling yourself like, oh, okay, like this is what he needs or this is what the relationship needs, I'll just do it. And it's like you're making the agreement with yourself instead of with the other person,
Without even
right?
asking the other person.
Without even asking that that's actually
Yeah.
what they want or whatever. And then like if that builds up over time, you're like, you don't even see how I'm sacrificing because I've pushed myself to text more than I want to, right? And the person's like, I have no idea what you're talking with, I always thought you were fine with our texting,
Yeah.
right?
I hear this all the time where it's like, I keep doing all these things for him. I'm doing all these lovely actions. And I'll say, yeah, but have you asked him? Like, is that actually what he wants? Or vice versa. I mean, gender's irrelevant. But yeah, it's like, I see your intention to be a good partner. And I think that's lovely. But do you know if these actions that apparently are costing you quite a lot, which is fine, that's for you to decide, right? Are they the things that your partner actually wants? Like, are these things that actually feel supportive as opposed to something that you think should be, again, the should be supportive? Sometimes that overlaps, but often it doesn't. And actually, it comes up in parenting all the time as well, right? Really, really good, well intentioned parents give their kids support, and yet the kid's going, okay, cool, but I don't actually want that. I want this over here. And
Totally.
again,
I think
we need
you're
a
you're
conversation.
you're hitting on like one of the struggles of loving somebody is like loving
Love it.
them in the way that they want to be loved, right? And the way they actually feel most loved. And
Mhm.
like you said, oftentimes we're doing it the way that we would feel loved. And so to have
Or
even
we
that
or we expect that they will feel loved, right? Makes sense to us,
right.
but it's not actually what they're looking for.
Totally. Like, and I even think about, like, say someone really likes giving gifts to somebody and they assume that that's like communicating love to the person. And actually, the loving gesture about that might be they see how much joy you get out of giving them gifts. So they're like trying to actually show love to you to actually appreciate the way that you're trying to love them, even though that's not actually how they would
Yeah.
like to be loved. Right. And I think that that is also part of what happens in loving relationships. And so it doesn't mean you can't love somebody in the way you would like to,
Yeah.
assuming that you're also loving them in the way they would like as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think mystery is good in
Hmm.
relationships. I do think curiosity is good. And this idea that you're always, as another human separate from me, I think there's always more that I can learn about you. And I think that wanting to learn that and having the curiosity around that is beautiful. But hanging together in mystery, I don't see that as being a positive state for a relationship, right? And I think there might be a misunderstanding, especially in romantic relationships, that if we just articulate all these negotiations and somehow it's going to detract from the romance or whatever else. And I would actually argue the opposite. I think that when I know what it is you want from me, I know what your expectations are, I've got so much more to work with, right? And to your earlier point, loving you the way you want to be loved does not mean that I have to be a different person. I think usually what it means is that I can adjust slightly. And that's where the compromise and adjustment comes in any relationship. And then alternatively, if what you ask of me, although reasonable to you, is more than I can give, then the answer is not for me to turn myself into a different person. It's for me to leave you, probably. Right.
Yeah.
And that's where fit comes in. And it's not because necessarily what you're asking for is crazy or too much. It's just possibly too much for me.
Yeah. And I think kind of what you're hitting on as you're even saying that, it's just like I feel sadness, right? And I think that it is sad, right? Where it's like maybe it is someone you connect with and you would like to be in contact with or in a deeper relationship with. And you hit this point where you're like, actually, I can't give that. I don't want to give that, right? And
The balance is off for me, right?
Yeah, there's just like
Yeah.
grief in that. And I think sometimes
Yeah.
people are even avoiding the grief of the loss to
Mhm.
acknowledge that. They're like, oh no, maybe I'll feel differently about this someday if I just keep doing it. And it's like someday never comes, unfortunately.
That's right. So back to the negotiations. Have them at the beginning. Save yourself a lot of grief.
Draw up a relationship contract and get those details nailed down.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't have to write it down. That's a bit much. But at least know what the framework of the plan that you're working with is, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, and that's part of the curiosity that I spoke of a minute ago. Understanding how you work, I think, is part of getting to know someone and deepening a relationship. And I think that that's really all we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, but walking into any new relationship from the assumption, and that includes with your child, right? That I don't know everything about this person. Like, this is a person for me to learn from and about. And I think if you step into every exchange from that perspective, it does reduce the number of incidences of resentment or frustration where it's like, okay, that didn't work, but I'm not going to assume it's because you were trying to mess with me. I'm going to assume that it's something that got missed between us. So can we talk about that? Yeah.
Totally. And I think like you actually learn something about yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having those explicit conversations to be like, oh, I didn't actually realize how important this was to me. Or I didn't realize like I do enjoy giving this more than I thought, or whatever.
Yes.
Sometimes it's only in practice that you actually know or you discover something about yourself. So, in that way, I think that's what can be lovely about a relationship that's curious and open. It's like you actually help your partner know themselves better as well as know you better.
Sometimes when I'm talking to clients who are struggling with dating or struggling to find a relationship, they focus a lot on what they want in the other person. And I think that's useful. It's good to sort of have a sense of what you want. But sometimes I'll say to them, well, how do you want to be in relationship?
Yeah.
What does that look like? And even more importantly, almost, what do you imagine it would feel like? How do you want to feel in relationship? What do you want to bring, or what do you think you bring to the relationship? And I think it's the other side that, I mean, we need both, but I think sometimes that part gets missed. We're so focused on finding the person with the qualities or whatever that maybe there's value in sort of stepping back and trying to figure out what we bring as well.
Yeah, exactly. Inhabiting some of the qualities.
I love it. Would you say inhabiting some of the qualities? Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, any other even silly dating red flags that you've either heard from clients or experienced yourself?
Silly ones.
Mm.
Let me think. I don't know why this was like coming up for me,
Mm.
but I never really liked romantic gestures or in terms of like what are kind of like traditionally accepted as like like if someone would give me flowers but it wasn't
Oh.
something that like it's like they don't know that I like this particular flower. It's something we ever talked about. It's like if they're giving it to me because that's what they're supposed to do on Valentine's Day or whatever, as opposed to like maybe I'd like a plant better or like whatever, like, and it's so there's something about it that feels like it's not about me.
Well, I think you're exactly right. The intention might be to do something for you,
Yeah.
but the gesture chosen has nothing to do with you. So I think that it can feel, ironically, quite off-putting.
Totally. And it was, I used to have
Mm.
such a like, I disliked flowers for a while because I didn't like that. And I didn't like watching them die essentially. But so it's so funny. I've come around the other way where it's like I'll purposely buy flowers now because I actually think it's a good exercise in like letting go and like letting
Mm.
something have its own like cycle and for it to be like beautiful for the time it's
That it
with
is
me and
around.
beautiful and
Yeah.
alive, and then
Yeah.
it dies and then it goes into compost, and like that's just like a cycle that's actually natural. I mean, it's not quite natural because we're cutting the flowers, but you know what I mean? Like it's
I
a
get your
living,
point.
a living and
Yeah.
dying cycle. So I was telling that to somebody and they're like, that's a little deep. Like, what, most people don't think that hard about flowers.
But if you, unless you get curious about the person you're getting to know, how could you possibly know if most people think that about flowers? That's my point. So I love it. I love it. But yeah, I mean, I think a good question to ask yourself when you're doing anything in any kind of relationship is, why am I doing this? Am I doing this for the other person, or am I doing this for me?
Yes, or like what society has told me is expected of me or I should do, you
Well, that's for
know?
me because I want to show up as a good partner or whatever it is. It's not actually for the
Yeah.
other person because I haven't asked the other person if this is what they want. I think it's a good interrogation point for all of us.
And I think there is kind of something really sad about people feeling like they should love the other person in a particular way and you're completely missing each other all the time. But you have actually good intentions, right? But you're like, no, I'm going to use this same track that I think is right without actually checking.
And actually, a lot of clients I talk to who struggle, I think that that's one of the areas we get into and try to free them from their sort of unaware adherence to that particular script or track or whatever. And at least we step back and go, okay, of all these assumptions and or beliefs that you have, if we take them one at a time, do any of them actually fit? Which ones fit? Which ones don't? Which ones can you throw away? Which ones are not yours? Which ones do you want to adopt? Whatever. But injecting some awareness into that, giving them the chance to operate much more spontaneously,
Yeah.
right? I think allows for obviously different outcomes and
Yeah,
helps them
exactly.
get
Because
unstuck.
you've actually processed those beliefs. Like they're no longer kind of hanging in the shadows, right? It's like you've looked
Right.
at them under a spotlight and some have been thrown away or adopted or adapted, right? And incorporated. And then it actually feels like part of you because you've
Yeah.
looked at it more deeply.
Okay, the last thing I'll say is when people use pet names, hard pass. Hard pass. And again, it all goes back to the same thing. If you know me at all, if you've been paying attention, if you've been listening to anything that I say, you will know that that is not cool. That's tone deaf, right? So listen and or adjust, right? You try it one time, I'm going to tell you I don't like it. Pay attention.
I guess I'm curious if you got a pet name, but that it was like so specific to you and your relationship. Like they call you like coffee cup or something. Like it's not a
Actually, I do.
traditional.
I have one and it's amazing. And shout out to my little niece who lives in British Columbia. She calls me Aunt Pickle just because she happens to like it and she thought it suited me. And she was 8 when she came up with that. So all props to her. And I'm going to adjust to that. No problem. So yeah, I'm very happy to be Aunt Pickle.
I love it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
It's relationship dependent and situational dependent, right?
totally, totally relationship dependent. Absolutely. All right. Well, for anybody who's listening, you've made it this far, please consider liking and subscribing. That helps us, of course. Any red flags for you or any funny stories that you want to share, drop them in the comments. We'd love to hear.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.